stream today, but as I was doing my morning meditation, I realized that there's some things that really I want to say without further delay, without further ado. So I want to start by saying that I've been experiencing a lot of intensity over the last couple of days. Some of it for sure has to do with Gimel Tammuz, the Rebbe's yard site, so to speak, being yesterday. Even this morning I woke up and tuned into a broadcast of a bring-in from California, from LA, where it was just not that late in the evening. And it's interesting how we have different time zones around the world. And some of it's been personal, stuff with my family, which thank God, that's what I want to say. And I think some of it is just whatever is happening in the world. We pick up more and more, the membranes that separate us are thinner and thinner. And this has been going on for actually quite a long time now, but it's just accelerating. And this is even aside from the fact that we're all connected to everything that happens everywhere by internet. Hello, Tom. And there's one big benefit of going on by myself. I love to go on with guests and friends, but I get to talk to you guys more if I'm not talking to other people. So anyway, here's the thing. And for some, I just, total transparency, because it helps to be transparent. I sat here for 5 minutes before I started talking because trying to collect my thoughts. I think that what I have to say is so important that I just want to get out of the way and trust that it's going to come out the way it needs to. So there are huge parallels from my perspective between what's happening in this whole process of the, Great Awakening on the geopolitical, I know it's not only geopolitical, but let's say the geopolitical stage there, and the process of Geula, even as it started its final phase in 1991, where the Rebbe ramped everybody up and said, it's now, and you're the one who has to make it happen. Is that not the same for those of you who are tuned in? Is that not the same as the message that more and more we're starting to hear from those white hats who we can kind of trust to kind of sometimes give us accurate information? Probably the most real thing that they've said to us so far is, it's here, but you have to do it. When you do it, it will happen. So this is absolutely a fractal theme. Hi, Edna. This is the way that it is in the world right now. There are cycles and cosmic principles that guide those cycles. And this is a cycle where the old is breaking down, where secrets are being revealed, whether they're deep, dark, awful, horrible secrets, or whether they're secrets of our own true nature. Both of those happen in awakening, just like the caterpillar melts down. And for the butterfly to constitute, this is just like things have to break down. You have to hit a wall before you open a new door. So those secrets, those deeper hidden things are being revealed wherever they fall. Likewise, the truth about people, other people, Hagila, other people in more visible places in the world, positions in the world, and also our own selves. So we're being faced with more and more and more truth, and that is part of the process, because when it comes to, a caterpillar, it's just instinctual. Its body turns to gel. Our bodies are not turning to gel. Our minds, our preconceptions, our way of seeing the world, the things that we believed have to turn to gel in order for us to actually discern deeper truth and to wire that in. That's what we're going through now. So here's the thing. I ask myself a lot, and maybe you do too, how it is that so many people in the world who might otherwise be intelligent and even tuned in, how is it that for so long in this process, I started asking this 32 years ago in the Geula process, but now it's everybody in the world. That was a smaller group. It was a different time. We didn't have the communications, there was very, people were faxing then. People weren't talking, there were cell phones, but people weren't using them. So there were not conference calls unless you paid, $1,000 to get 20 people together on a call. So we have all of this energetic clarity. We have this telepathic clarity. We have technical clarity and connectedness. We have so many news sources. None of this existed back then. And yet so many people still are not awake to the truth. They're still not looking deeply. They're still not questioning their existence, even though what we've been through in the last couple of years, more than a couple, but 2, 3, is unprecedented. Totally impossible to believe that it actually happened. Nothing is the same, and yet there are a lot of people who are still walking around in a kind of trance. I once got a letter from the Rebbe when I wrote about Israel. I might have shared this on a live at one time, where I got an answer. I opened the Egrot, the Rebbe's collection of letters. Anyone can do this, and I got an answer, two different letters on 2 sides of the page, but both of them came down to the same thing. I don't remember anymore word for word. Didn't print them out, but the letter basically said that Anash, meaning the followers of the Rebbe, the very followers of the Rebbe who were privileged to see his face on a daily basis, pray with him, learn from him, study his Torah, get blessings from him, miracles from him. He said, Anash, that's the follower, that's the name for the followers, are in a state of dormita. Not just sleep, but like a trance. Dormita is a trance. It's the word that's used on the night of Rosh Hashanah when God rises up from his involvement in the world and waits for us to bring him down on a whole new level. And basically the Rebbe said, happy is he who can wake them up. And then in the other letter, he talked about how people say they want to do something, but all they do is, in the best case, is go to a meeting, argue with other people, decide that nobody has anything to say, they're all a bunch of dopes, and walk out and feel like, accomplished, I did my job. So it's interesting that the Rebbe himself, and there's so many letters, there are thousands and thousands of letters. The ones that we get are definitely connected to us if we're being answered. I'm constantly getting letters about teaching Torah, bringing Geula. Those are the letters that I get like on a routine basis. So there is a connection. There are ways that the Rebbe can communicate with us, like Alt Tzaddikim. There's so much happening that we can't see on the surface. We've got to look below the surface. We've got to start engaging beneath the surface. Hello, Kabbalah Queen. Hi, Book Mouse. So this is the thing. I ask myself, how is it that people are so asleep still with everything that's happened in the world? And I know more and more people are waking up, everybody at their own level. But compared to what it should be and compared to how fast it should have been, according to nature, not with miracles, it's a miracle that it's taking so long. Miracles don't have to be not always what we want, but the word that's used in Hasidus and Kabbalah is a Pella, P-E-L-A, which means a wonder, like something that's not really possible. It's outside of the system of nature. So today I was asking myself, again, what is it, especially if you think about what happened in Israel, and the Jewish people are the people of the book, right? And the people who have routinely, consistently suffered attempts on the part of many nations to expel, extinguish, persecute. So you would think, and then we have the phrase never again, right? So you would think there would have been more suspicion or hesitation to run and get the thing, and it's still, people still, there's a little bit of a shift. And I'm not so much on the inside. I'm not a native Hebrew speaker. I hang around mostly online or with people who speak English, but it's not what it should be. Like, people still assume that the government, they're mostly our friends, if anybody even bothers to look at all. And this is one of the issues that we've had over these years, that we haven't, how did things get this bad in terms of, now I'm back on the geopolitical, how did things get this bad? No one was paying attention. And yes, the system was rigged against us. And yes, I'm hearing that there were forces from other dimensions and other places in the universe that were rigging things against us. And actually, that's what I'm going to talk about. But it's taking a really long time to wake up. So it's imperative that we start to see what's going on and see what the underlying patterns are. So in the story of Egypt, the slavery in Egypt, and then the redemption from Egypt, when the Jewish people, the souls of Israel, the descendants of Jacob, Yaakov, came out with Moses after the 10 plagues and all of the fanfare that happened then, they were followed out. So they were by a lot of Egyptians. So history says that there were sources say there were about 2,400,000 actual descendants of Jacob, Jews. They weren't officially called Jews yet, but the Israelites who came out, and they were followed by about the same number, almost 2.5 million Egyptians, literally got up in the middle of the night after the plague of the firstborn and followed them out, followed Moses. And who were they? They were not the most refined. I used to think these were the most refined spiritual Egyptians who saw, the error of their ways and who felt like connected to the Jewish people and God. That wasn't who they were. Maybe on some deep level there was that. There were those cosmic sparks. But these were literally led by the two children of Balaam in English, who was one of the chief sorcerers of Pharaoh. And his two sons, Jonas and Yambres, were the leaders of this group of Egyptians known as the Arab Rub, the mixed multitude. Hi, Rebecca. It's really good to be with you guys. If we have time, I'll be happy to chat with you a bit. But I do want to get this out because I feel like God is telling me to say it now. God, my soul, I don't know. At the end of the day, we're all connected in there when you go deep enough. So they came and they wanted to be part of the Jewish people. Why? Because they were always all about power, manipulating nature. There are two kinds of power. This is so important. This gives you the keys to everything. There are two ways of getting power. One is through God. That was the Moses way. And the other was through the occult arts, or is still manipulating nature. That's the Pharaoh way. And Egypt was the capital of black magic internationally. And that's one of the reasons why these people, these Egyptians who followed out the Jews out of Egypt, were called the Arab Rub, the mixed multitude, is because they were mixed from all different peoples that came from all different countries. Why? Because Egypt was the capital of black magic. They had schools that taught people how to manipulate nature. What they didn't have was God, Hashem. They had their gods, and Pharaoh was the chief god. The Torah says he used to sneak down to the Nile every morning to relieve himself because he told people he doesn't excrete. Gods don't have to excrete. It's funny he never got caught, but anyway, that's the story. So these people, what was the nature of? They were part of the sorcery movement of the black magic, the occult arts, the manipulation of nature. What was their way of manipulating nature? What is sorcery primarily defined as? It's the ability to use the mouth to cast a spell. Think about that for a second. So years ago, while you're thinking about it, I'll just tell you that years ago when I first moved to Israel, and I would be here and see what was going on, rockets rained down on civilians from Gaza, where, the Israeli government evicted Jewish people who were building greenhouses and beautiful communities and handed it over to terrorists who then attacked this. It's so bizarre. It's so bizarre. And the explanation of this is we do have this fifth column within us. And because we mixed, we all have some resonance of it or some residue of it, some much more than others. Some carry big pieces, but some are prophesied in Torah to be taking certain roles at certain times. But it was so obvious to me that what was actually happening, what it was. I mean, it's a small country and everyone knows everyone else, and you can hear the sirens, and my kids used to, run on the roof to see the Patriot missiles exploding the rockets. Anyway, and then you'd see what was reported in the LA Times and the New York Times and, the Minneapolis Star Tribune or whatever. And they would be saying lies. They would be the way they twisted the news. Like if someone was knifed by, a random enemy on the street, and then a passerby would shoot the attacker, those papers routinely would say things like, innocent, or they wouldn't say it, Arab shot by Jewish civilian, things like that. And it happened again and again. It happened also, it happened on an individual level, on on the street level. It also happened much more on the national level, where they were just flat out lying about Israel, and everybody believed it, and they still do. And this is one of the actual reasons for the rising anti-Semitism. Just thinking back years before, I know some people don't like to use that word, and it has been very misused, but let's say just it's still maybe Jew hatred, whatever you want, whatever way you want to name it. When Israel started to have miraculous victories upon their attackers, over their attackers, especially starting in 1967, the Six-Day War, where it was complete miracles. All the Arab nations attacked, and little tiny Israel, without that much technology, just wiped them out in 6 days. That was not natural. That was a miracle. Likewise, in the Gulf War, when there were 39 Scud missiles aimed at Israel, Saddam Hussein said that he was going to burn down half the country. His intention was to send a Scud to the main gas line running through the country, and he hit it. He hit that gas line. But the gas had been turned off for repairs. And I saw a picture of a bookstore, a Jewish bookstore in Jerusalem, that had been hit by a Scud. The nose of the Scud, these things are huge. They're like size of a truck. The Scud had hit the roof, gone through the roof, landed on a chumash, on a Bible, the 5 books of Moses, and just sat there. Now that bookstore has a little sign, a placard with the Scud missile in front of it. So this is what's been happening here. And when I don't know, maybe we had better governments, more honest governments in the past, I think things hadn't gotten this bad. I think it's been escalating. I can't say for sure. But when the Jewish people were proud and fought back, and God helped us miraculously. Like, I heard a lot of stories about what happened in the Gulf War. And just one of them was, somebody met with a Marine when there were Americans stationed here, and that Marine said, God is alive and well in Israel. Oh, there are so many stories. I heard literally from a guy that had been here, still in America. He had gone out Friday night after dinner to give a class in a nearby block, and as he walked home, he saw the apartment building where his family lived hit by a Scud, and the entire thing exploded and crumbled to the ground. And he said he stood there and he was praying that a Scud would come and hit him too, because all of his family, his wife, his children. And then he started to see little figures moving in the rubble. And he ran over there, and there was not a single person who was seriously injured at all. No one. There was a woman who'd been hiding in the closet, and she got some scratches. I mean, and there's so many stories about this. So this is the relationship that we're meant to have: confidence, connection to God, trust. And even when we don't have it perfectly, if we even have it a little bit, we're not opposed to it, we have miracles. Israel's the core example of this, but this is true for everybody. And this is a big piece of what I want to say here. So why is it not happening? Why are people so gullible? Why are people so still asleep? Why are people so easy to brainwash? Why are people so easy to control after they've been burned time and time again and swear to themselves and each other it's never, ever going to happen again, never again? How is it possible? And the answer, my friends, is this mixed multitude. It is this fifth column. It is this power of trance. There's a trance. It's supernatural. Like we might say to ourselves, this is supernaturally insane. Yes, it is. It's supernaturally insane. There's still supernatural powers carried by the Erev Rav, and I'm sure they're not the only ones. These are powers that have been used since the beginning of recorded time. And those powers, primarily in speech, primarily in reporting, primarily in narrative, primarily in education, in imagery, in advertising, it's all over the place, is seducing us, is weaving a spell around us, is putting us in a trance of disempowerment. Yes, also, make finances really hard, make medicine toxic, make the environment toxic, make food toxic, brainwash us to just buy, work. There's so many things, keep us in a constant state of war. And I'm sure it goes way, way deeper than that, even on the surface. I'm not talking about what's under the surface. Unfortunately, most of us have already gotten word about that. Which is the everyday life. It's gotten beyond insane. So it all starts. How does this kind of infiltration happen? The trance. I mean, again, I don't know about the outside interference, but even that this is the methodology that's used. The methodology that's used is trance, brainwashing, saya, putting spells on people. And then they sit down and allow things to get worse and worse and worse and worse and worse and worse and worse over the years, and never either don't even realize, feel completely disempowered, or have been taken out of the game by, being forced to run around and, just to make a living, and the tiredness that we have from everything that's going on in the physical, mental, emotional, and maybe even spiritual realms. So that's the bad news. But in a sense, it's really, really, really uplifting. It's consciousness always gives you choice. So when we realize, A, that this is a process that started a long time ago, B, God allowed it to happen. And if God allows it to happen, you have to say that God planned it, even though Chassidus explains that there are things that God has to do for the purpose, for the ultimate purpose, for our growth and transformation, but he does them like behind the back. It's not face to face. It's like, I don't want this, but like when a parent has to punish a child just because it's the only way. You really want your child to go on that vacation to Disneyland, but you planned it because you love them so much, and you've been anticipating their smiles and their joy and their memories, and they, just keep doing what is not good for them, but doesn't work until you have, you escalate the threats until you have to stop them from going on the trip. That's not face to face. No one who loves their child wants to do that. It's terribly painful for the parent, even more than for the child. But that God does some things that way. Again, because the entire purpose here is the awakening. And there's this deep trance. So you can look at it also like this, like when a person wants to get in super good shape, one person wants to get in shape so they could lift 5 pound weights, right? Work up to that, maybe 10-pound weights. When somebody's a bodybuilder and they need to get in really cosmically powerful shape, they don't lift 5 or 10-pound weights. They lift 200 or 300-pound barbells. And that's the advanced track. So all of us are on the advanced track. Why? Because that's the reason why we're here. That's the purpose for all of creation. God is creating us as his partners, as his beloved. Yes, as his subjects and then as his children, but ultimately as his beloved partners. There's going to be passion between us and intimacy, like a beautiful marriage. The Torah says this. I'm not making this up. So in order to be a partner with God, like the creator of heaven and earth and the multiverse and way beyond all of that, who do we have to be? And it's in a certain sense, it's the biggest possible, craziest possible paradox, how this happens. Because in order to allow us to exist, there's nothing here but God. There has to be a multiverse created specifically out of layer upon layer upon layer upon layer upon layer upon layer of concealment, where the light gets hidden, diminished, and then a little piece of the light comes through, often in distorted, more and more distorted ways, until we come down to this physical world and a human being is born without any consciousness of his own essence or his own source, his or her. And that's mirrored and supported by the physical world. And it has to be that intense because the nature of our being is so infinite at its core that to hide it from us, there have to be forces that are so powerful that they're greater even than the expression of that source. To hide and hold back an infinite light, an infinite presence, an infinite power, you have to have something even more infinite, right? Otherwise, it wouldn't hide it. What could hide the Orient Sof? What could hide God's infinite life and being? Only the Tzimtzum, only God's higher intention to hide himself. And that's the nature of our existence. That's the core of our existence, is totally infinite, divine, covered up by almost infinite layers. Maybe there are infinite layers of concealment, to the point where we feel separate, small, vulnerable, and alone, and also like the center of the world. Don't we each feel like we're the only one in our own world? Don't we each feel like either the victim of everything or the cause of everything? I mean, how many of us actually ongoingly, like, be honest, if you do, say so, but how many of us ongoingly on a 24/7 basis feel our connection to all things, how we're just water in the ocean, coming in and out of the various vessels, and that is on purpose. It's on purpose that we feel alone like that, because who else feels alone? Not like that, but in another way, is God. So this human experience also that generates our very existence, that is the foundation of our very existence, also allows us to relate to God's experience. No angel, no spiritual being of any sort in any galaxy can relate to God, because they're all experiencing the light. That's why they're higher consciousness than we are, because they're connected to their source consciously. Maybe not the ultimate source, but they know where they came from, at least, one level before. We humans, the Chassidus says that we're created by a process called dilug, which literally means jump or a quantum leap. There's a quantum leap that hides our preceding source, that even hides the soul from the body and from the mind. These are cosmic forces that are allowing us to live. But what is the nature of the cosmic forces within us, both the ones that are concealing our essence and the ones that are connected to our essence, shining off our essence? They are divine. And the whole game here is to wake up and realize that. And it's not just realizing it. Let's be honest. It's a big mistake to think that it's a one-time thing. This is a process of metamorphosis. It's actually been going on since the beginning of the whole fall in the Garden of Eden. I don't know much about previous cycles of history. There's a lot of silence about those, and there are some sources that talk about those pre-Adamic, pre-Adam, times. And some people say they were only spiritual. Others say that they're physical. Who knows if they're dimensions of reality where time is malleable. I don't, maybe this one is a dimension where time is malleable. Some people say that. It doesn't really matter. I know that we're like horses with blinders on. We're meant to be dealing with reality in this process within this 7,000-year cycle, the Shemitah of history, because this is where the transformation occurs. This is where the metamorphosis plays out. That's why we have the Torah. Whatever previous civilizations there may or may not have been on whatever level, they didn't have the Torah. And the Torah is here to create peace in the world. Only with the Torah can we have a sustainable world. All these stories about how there were advanced civilizations that somehow blew up on themselves and they're hit. The Torah is here to prevent that, but we need to connect to it. We need to use it. It's God's wisdom and will. And it doesn't exist standalone. The Torah is not God's wisdom and will for God. It's God's wisdom and will for us. And not just that we should know what to do, which is definitely an important, super important part of the process, that we should know what to do and we should know what's true. And we should know how to make a sustainable world and how to make a sustainable, multiverse and sustainable human, or, ET human, whatever it is, whatever's here. The Torah has all of that. But it is also the inner Torah, the authentic Kabbalah and Hasidus. The purpose of that is to transform us to the step by step and leap by leap till we show up more and more of who we are. This, again, isn't going to be only a one-time thing, and it's not only a one Shemitah thing. There are 7 cycles of 7,000 years, and then there are 50,000 cycles of 50,000 years, and after that, who knows? And in all of these cycles, at every moment, we are becoming more of who we are, and we are uncovering, discovering more of who God is in this relation. We're establishing the relationship now. We're getting married. That's what's happening here. And it's been rough. It's been a very rough engagement and pre-engagement, very rough. But we're getting ready for the wedding, Once that happens, then the game changes. Then the discovery in the relationship is done without pain. So we're used to, sometimes people say, what would the world be like? I haven't gotten to the really punchline yet, but I will soon. What would the world be like without contrast, without struggle? It would be boring. No, it wouldn't. This is not interesting. This is old. This is old and dreary and weary and deadly. We're used to, though, thinking that all contrast comes from having something be wrong and having to fix it till it's not wrong. That's only in this cycle, in this part of that cycle. That can end any time. And that's what I want to get to very shortly, how it can end, how we can thrive and lead with purpose in the coming storm, because the storm's coming. It's already on the way. It's already here, but it's going to get a lot, more stormy. That's how birth works. That's how birth works, because that core inside, that awakening has to happen, not just because, Q or whoever says it, and it's obviously true, but because God says it, because that's our purpose. We're created for that. The work that we've had to do to get to this point has had to be done in a state of kind of slumber, because it's been more unconscious. It's been more like do, train yourself to do. Don't worry about what you think, feel. Yeah, try to learn, but it doesn't matter. You're not just here to feel things. It's not about you, baby. It's about God. Do your job. Keep the Shabbos, the Shabbat. Give tzedakah, charity. Don't steal. Don't murder. Don't envy. Don't worship idols. Have courts of law. So we've been all of this time creating more of an awareness, and it's been a long process, of what morality, justice, and righteousness really is, what it really takes to create a sustainable world. We're downloading and integrating over time God's values, and most of it is happening in a way that people don't even realize. So you can have a person who doesn't even believe in God, but will tell you there's a right and a wrong. Is there really? Where does right and wrong come from if not from God? There is no such thing as right and wrong, separate from a creator who decides and tells you what's right and wrong. So there's been that transference of divine values to a very large degree into humans. There's always a lot more room for improvement. But what we're just starting now on a real basis, and we have transformed the nature of nature till technology, till innovation is bursting out of a formerly concealing physical world. The physical is now showing us more and more divine potential rather than hiding it. That's prophesied too, and that's just going to increase, including our physical bodies, including our physical brains. And the main thing we're doing here now is to wake up to our true source. At the end of the day, and I mean the day, at the end of that day, when we're at the last day of concealment of exile, the world will turn to God. Everybody will realize that, hey, there's one source to everything, to all of us, to all of history, to all of past, present, and future. One source, that's God. That's Ein Od Milvado, all there is. So that is prophesied. And now I want to just take a little bit of a step forward here and talk just briefly about the Sikha, the Rebbe's discourse, one of them, on the portion of Balak, the Torah portion of Balak, which talks about Bilam, the sorcerer. Remember, I said that the Erev Rav was led by the sons of Bilam, the evil prophet. He wasn't a false prophet. He was a prophet, but he was an evil prophet. So that the nations of the world couldn't say, the Jews, they were good. They just served God because they had a prophet. So God created a prophet who was also on a very high caliber in skill, but not in moral values, not in good intention. So anyway, in Balak, the Jewish people are standing, the children of Israel are standing on the border of the shore of the Jordan River, the border of Israel, waiting to go into Israel the first time. And things happen that spoil that and send them back. That was happening a lot during the time, the 40 years in the desert. But one of the things that happened there, or one of the things that corresponds to the portion of Balak, as the Rebbe explains it, is there's the Torah reading, and then there's the Haftarah, which is the portion of prophecy that goes to the Torah portion. So throughout the year, there's a Torah portion for every week. Sometimes they're combined, goes by the Jewish calendar, the lunar calendar. So sometimes, whatever, it doesn't matter. So there's a Torah portion, and then there's the prophecy portion that goes with the Torah. The reason this was originally instituted was because there were many times in Jewish history where the nations that the Jews were occupied by or living under made it illegal or life-threatening to learn Torah. So they did not know as much about the prophecy, so people would read the prophecy instead of reading the portion of the Torah so as not to get caught and not to get murdered or whatever. But the prophecy for each portion has to have the same inner message as the portion itself. Anyway, cutting to the chase, because I don't want to review that whole thing right now, although it's incredibly powerful. And every time I think about it, every time I learn it, it gets only more powerful. But it's talking about, the Rebbe says that this portion, which is talking about when the Jews were ready to enter the land of Israel for the first time, historically, and they would have done so if not for the sins, which required further learning and relation and awakening. What is a sin? One of the words for sin is chet, which means to miss the mark. So we keep missing the mark because we're not fully awake. We're not even close to fully awake, but we're moving in that direction. We've got to move more quickly in that direction, more accurately in that direction. So the Rebbe says that the description, the Haftarah talks about, and yes, you may have heard me say this before. Hear it again. I'm hearing it again in a whole different way, in a whole new way. The prophet Micha says that there will come a time when the remnants, the survivors, the remnants of the children of Jacob, always, haven't been. The Jewish people never has grown. Why? Persecution, genocide, forced conversions. One way or another, it always remains, at least those who know that they're Jewish according to Jewish law. A lot of things will come out in the wash later on, but it's always hovering around 12, 13, 14, 15 million. And for that to happen, and Jews have large families, so especially Torah-based Jews, so for that to happen, there's significant attrition that's pretty consistent throughout. So the prophet says that there will come a time when the remnants of Jacob will be surrounded by many nations, to the point where lo yikava leish, we will not be able to put our hope in man and not be able to depend upon humans. And there the Rebbe talks about, and this is the only part I want to emphasize here today, because I'm seeing it from another angle today. And again, I'm being pushed, pulled, urged to share this, because we need to know this, because we need to do this. And I hope a lot of people see this video. And I'm asking you to share, with any of your like-minded friends. So what is the purpose, the Rebbe asks, of this increased evil? And then he says it's not only from nations that surround us, it's from within us. There's evil within us. And here the Sikh is talking about the Jewish people, which is a fractal for all peoples. There's evil within us, he says, amongst the Jewish people themselves. Now, is it strange? Is it not strange that we find, and it infuriates me and kind of makes me nauseous when I see people list all these names, the bad guys who, a lot of the names sound Jewish. A lot of them are just, disguising themselves in Jewish names. A lot of them are really not Jewish, even by blood. But there are those members of the Jewish people who are on the wrong side, and even intentionally. And that's the energy of the Erev Rav. That's the Egyptian parasite, the sorcery parasite that took hold inside the body of the souls of Israel. And it's causing, and there was actually, the Midrash records that there's an argument between God and Moses about whether to convert these Egyptians into the Jewish people in time to get the Torah, to receive the Torah. And God said, don't do it. Don't do it, Moshe. If you accept them into the Jewish people, they will cause pain and suffering for you all, from now until Mashiach comes. And Moshe said, I don't know the exact quote, but basically, I want them also to experience a relationship with God. Moshe was standing for elevating the whole world, nothing left behind. But it has, in fact, caused incredible pain and suffering. And these occultists who weave spells with their words, their mouth, their tone, their visions, their imagery, their advertising, their media, they got the deepest hold on humanity and the Jewish people. And that may be one reason why, one of the several reasons I've entertained why, it's Q said Israel last, because this is the source of energy. This is the portal between heaven and earth, the core portal. The temple, the Beit HaMikdash, is the core place. The foundation stone is like the pineal gland of the world, not the universe, the multiverse. So yes, it has to be controlled. If you look at history, everybody's always been fighting over Israel, the Crusaders, the Turks, whoever and all. I don't know everybody who was here, but everybody wanted Israel. Everybody wanted Jerusalem. The famous final war, Gog and Magog, the prophesied war, is actually we're experiencing it now, and it can take many forms, but its core, by definition form, is Ishmael, the descendants of Ishmael, the Muslim nations, the descendants of Esav, the Christian nations, and the Erev Rav, this fifth column within the Jews, all banding together to try to take Jerusalem away from the Jews. I'm sure it's still happening. It explains a lot about what's going on here. I mean, this is where God wants to bring himself down into the most physical of homes. Actually, we're each going to be God's home. We already are, but he might not be so comfortable in a lot of his home. But that's the temple, which is going to be a house of prayer for all peoples and the connector between heaven and earth and the center of peace in the universe. Meanwhile, we're still sorting things out. So the Rebbe describes this time. It's all so clear. If you know the history and you know the prophecy, so clear. I'll look at the questions before I go. I don't want to forget my point. I just want this to flow through me, whatever Hashem needs everybody to hear. So this evil that is outside of us and inside of us as well, and we all have some kind of resonance for it, or we wouldn't be able to be affected by it. That's what we want to heal. That's where our healing work comes in. You can't be triggered if you're not loaded, they say. So we want to get rid of what's loading us so we can't be triggered, so that we can see the truth. Because we're on the front lines here. We're on the front lines of consciousness, and this war is a war of consciousness. There's no question about it. Always has been. We have to be on the side of divine consciousness here. Everything else is more or less a distraction at this point, but a very intense one. So the evil, the Rebbe says, will be so intense that we will not be able to get rid of it on our own. We're going to need siyua milmaila. We're going to need divine help that will uproot that evil from within us. But what is our job? Our job is not to directly fight evil. And in most cases, it's not, unless it's your direct job, then it's, in most cases, that's not your direct job, except by uprooting it from within yourself, your triggers, your bad impulses. The Torah's all over that. But what is our job? Our job is to make a shift, a consciousness shift, a shift in what we hold on to, a shift in our awareness, till we can see right through these myriad, thousands and thousands, maybe millions and millions, maybe billions, maybe trillions of layers of concealment that stand between our vision, even our physical experience, and reality. What is reality? Ein od milvado. There's nothing here but God. What is our experience? Whoa, man, it's a crazy world and I'm all alone and they're out to get me. And even if you don't feel that way some of the time, every one of us, whether we're conscious of it or not, feels it a lot of the time, even if for fleeting instances, and some of us are living with that thought. Okay, that is only God's energy of tzimtzum, this elaborate, miraculous, although extremely unpleasant in a lot of ways, at a lot of times, process that allows God to hide his infinite light where there's no room for anything or anyone else, to create everything in the multiverse. Every time God put on another layer of tzimtzum, another curtain that hid the previous higher level of light or distorted it, another universe was created with its own creatures, literally. And Hasidus Tanya says there are infinite worlds at every level. So that's what's standing between the reality and our perception. We, souls and bodies on earth is the only place that has free choice, direct from the Rebbe. We are the lowest. We're the end of the line. I mean, we are conscious. We're not as low as, let's say, a rock. In some ways, maybe a rock is higher because a rock doesn't do evil. So we are a combination of the highest and the lowest. Actually, Adam is made from, the word Adam is made from dust of the earth, right? Quantum material gathered from the whole potential multiverse, so that a person will contain everything and every place. And then he lives because of the breath of God, which he's created in the image of God because of his inner structure, spiritual structure, and free choice. So the word Adam comes from the word Adamah, which has those two meanings. Adamah means earth, and Adamah means to resemble, Adamah Le'ayon, to resemble God. So we are made up of the highest and the lowest, and we're walking around here with free choice that we don't even realize we have, in a world that we don't understand, getting sidetracked, bombarded, terrified, manipulated, psyoped by everyone and everything under the sun, and probably some things that are not under the sun. And what we have to do now, and this is how you can thrive and lead, because if you do this, you're going to be one of the few people who understand the story, who are connecting to God and the blueprint for creation, the Torah, and living it in your life as best you can, and you'll get better every day. And when you get triggered and it seems like you're getting worse, you're still getting better because you don't stop. You go in, you found another trigger, and you do the work to clear it out. And now that apparent derailment pulls you forward, shoots you forward like the bow on like the string on the bow, or the hand that pulls back to throw the ball. All of our obstacles are like that, and we'll see it if we align with it in our beliefs, our thoughts, and our actions. We'll see it. So in order to thrive, in order to lead, in order to get through the storm without having to be sidetracked in this way, because everybody has their own individual reality bubble. These days, it's visible and real more than ever before. It's like it's not an accident. In the final plague in Egypt, that finally, Pharaoh's people started, and his firstborn made war against him because they didn't want to be killed. And finally, he had to say uncle and admit that the God was higher by far than all of his gods, and God took the people out. So what was the final plague that happened that caused that? It was the plague of the firstborn. And what happened in the plague of the firstborn was that God by himself passed over every single house in Egypt. And wherever there was a firstborn of the Egyptians, that firstborn died. And if it wasn't a firstborn, the firstborn didn't die. And the Jews, their firstborn didn't die. And so the same, and the Torah talks about it, about this is the very same energy that can kill an opponent, can heal an ally. And the Egyptians had plenty of time to stop being slave masters. It didn't just happen out of the blue. They were warned again and again and again and again and again. Plenty of Jews died too, actually, in the plague of darkness, but not in the plague of the firstborn. Even to the point where, it showed who'd been fooling around, because sometimes somebody would have, 5 sons and 3 of them would die because each one had a different father. Anyway, the point is we have our own reality bubble. We're really in the place that we were in then, only far, far, far more advanced. And now it's for all of the, what do they call it? All of the chips, what's that expression? It's for all of the something. Anyway, so each of us, we want to connect. Whatever our background is, we want to connect to God. You want to say to God, I'm on your side. Show me what to do. I am here to learn the Torah, your wisdom and will. I am here to work on my triggers and the lies that have been embedded in me. And all of us have lies that have been embedded in us. Not our fault, but it's our choice and our responsibility now. And the primary method, I'll stop with this and look at questions because it's Friday and it's getting late. The primary method to facilitate this, the primary method to create your own bubble of safety and divinity, to thrive and lead with purpose. Why with purpose? Because this is your purpose. This is the ultimate purpose of every person right now. And it'll come up in your own individual circumstances, your relationships, your work. But the ultimate purpose is to know, to wire into your human consciousness, to your cells, to how your body responds to fear. Struggle for me. I'm working on it. That's what we do. We work on it, and God helps us, and we ask God to help us work on it, because it's got to be that combination. It's got to be that partnership. We are revealing the Ein Od Milvado. How do we do that? Primarily, we're not putting blood on the lintels of our doors like they did in Egypt. That's the mezuzah. It's good to have one. Do you know, if you're Jewish and you have a kosher mezuzah, one that's written by a qualified scribe in accordance with the law on parchment, and you put it up on one of your doors, it actually protects all houses. Yeah, it's really true. It's very powerful. But that's not what we're doing now. We're not putting blood on the lintel. We are connecting with God in conscious ways, with not just faith that there's a higher force and there's an order and, I have to submit. No, with intimacy and proactivity And the primary way that we do this is through the power of bitachon. Bitachon is trust. It is relaxed. It is, and sometimes it takes a lot of work to be relaxed. The Rebbe said, at least, when you're doing the work, you get credit for the work. But the primary place where you want to show that is in your speech. Feel nervous? You're waiting for a good outcome. You don't know. Maybe it takes a huge miracle. Bitachon. I trust you, God. I trust you, God. And that's your commitment. You throw yourself at it. And then you do the work to make that trust real. And when you get triggered, like that professional bodybuilder, you will get triggered. Why? Because what you have to accomplish here is cosmic. Oh, all the marbles. It's for all the marbles. How come none of you told me that? We have to accomplish the infinite. We have to accomplish the impossible. And we are. And we will. It's our destiny. But we can't accomplish it alone. We have to accomplish it with God. Bitachon. Okay. Faith. We're not even talking about no faith. No faith, there's only what you see is what you get. There's a world, it's dog eat dog. None of us are there, even if sometimes we feel like it. Then faith is, which we struggle for, is there is a creator, there's a plan, it's above me. I can't really understand it, but I will accept. I'll do my best at least to accept that it's for the good and that I'm not alone in the world. And if something happens, it's maybe because I deserve it or I need it for a lesson or, yada, yada. I'm not saying it's not holy, but that is not bitachon. That's not going to get us out of here. Bitachon, so in faith, there's God and there's you in the world, and you keep connecting up to God so that you don't just feel like you're flailing around in the world. Bitachon is there's God and there's you and there's the world. And you and God are intimate partners. So when something is happening in the world or needs to happen or needs to stop happening or is scaring you, you go straight up here, face to face, and you say to God, I want to have bitachon. I want to have trust. I know how absolutely crucial it is. I know that it is the only thing. I know that all the evil and all the challenges and all the increased turbulence and all the scary things that have come or are still going to appear maybe, unless we short circuit them. That's the plan. But we can go from here. If we get close enough, then we have a lot to say. So the primary and really only thing is that people have to wake up. We have to wake up, and then we have to help wake up other people. So some of it's like from what we say and do. Some of it's from who we are. Because at the end of the day, when we get deep enough inside of us, we're all like cells in one body. So a cell starts vibrating a certain way, and then the cells around it automatically start vibrating that way. And that's really the primary way to do things. Go vertical, not horizontal. But you say to God, I want to trust you. I'm scared right now. If you are, please help me. Please take away the fear. Help me work on the fear. We're partners. Or please at least make it so that the fear is not in the way of the results that I want, because you know that I'm working on bitachon and I want it with all my heart and all my being. So guide me and help me. And then you want to let it go. Because bitachon isn't like constantly like, please, 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 please. And if you forget to say please, maybe it's like backseat driving. We don't need to backseat drive God. We need to change our wiring, and we need to do it for real. And it's an ongoing process, but it's a powerful, essential process. It is the process. It is the. And you can't do it alone. And you're aiming for perfect, but you don't have to do it perfectly to get the results. God just has to know, and you have to know you're in it together, and this is what it is right now. So when it's not perfect, you don't try to suppress, and you don't give up, and you don't get mad. Or if you get mad, you work with that too. Anything that comes up is just, more weights to build, to bring out the inner oneness and power of your soul, of your core. It's beyond soul even. And you bring it to God, and then you need to relax. And that could also take a lot of work, ironically enough. Why do you need to relax? Once you've done your real work. I was working on something yesterday for most of the day, something really important for one of my kids. And I found that I was not really, one of the reasons why I've been feeling so out of it, because a big part of me wasn't even with me or the people I was actually sitting with here. It was, somewhere else where something else was happening. And I did the work inside of myself until I felt like I had reached the furthest point that I could in trusting, deep dialogue with God and deep prayer. Like I said in the call yesterday, somebody didn't even know it was happening. Close friend by divine God did this. On the Rebbe's yard site on Gimel Tammuz yesterday, called me from the gravesite, Zion of the Baal Shem Tov in Ukraine, in Mezhevush. Just held the phone up there. Didn't see her face. I saw the Baal Shem Tov. I've never connected to the Baal Shem Tov before. And I felt the Baal Shem Tov. And it was so intense that it was really hard to even open my mouth. We're connected in super real ways. And the more you work on bitachon, the more you work to reveal the connection between your personal self, all events of the world, all events of your life, and your one source, the one source and the one essence of everything and all of us, and certainly you. The more you reveal that in the world, the more your world will change, and the more your world will reveal that back to you. And life will be miraculous. Bitachon, the Torah says, in a variety of places, Chavos Labavos, the duties of the heart, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, there are many sources. The Zohar, there are many sources for this. That it's up to you and me, it's up to you to change ourselves so that we are channels, vessels to receive that deepest, most miraculous divine love and divine power, divine union. It's right here. If you've ever seen, you probably watch memes because of who you are. Maybe you've seen that meme of a bunch of hunched up slave-looking people under a table with a bunch of evil cigar smoking, conniving black hats sitting around and plotting. And the caption is, just stand up. Just stand up, man. Just stand up. That's where we're at now. We have to wake up and stand up. And that's it. If you have to do anything else, really, you'll be guided. But that's not the essence of it. The essence is stand up face to face with your creator and say, I'm ready for this, even if I don't feel it, even if I don't feel worthy, even if I don't believe 100%, even if I don't know, I'm ready for it. And I'm putting myself in your hands. You help me. You guide me. I will do my best to respond. And you keep asking for that every day throughout the day. And when something comes up, you go deeper into it because now you're lifting weights. Now you're going to a higher advanced level. And that, by doing that, you are leading, you are fulfilling your purpose, and you will thrive. It's an absolute, maybe I didn't finish my thought. The Torah says there's so many sources that say that when a person has bitachon, true bitachon, complete bitachon, I'm relying on you, God. Whatever the mechanism is through which the thing happens, I'm relying on you. That is an absolute guarantee that you will have revealed good. Now, sometimes it takes a little while because we're being trained, right? If it was just as simple as, oh, I trust you, give me $1 million, and the $1 million showed up in your hand, or someone ringing the doorbell gave it to you, that would not be developing, that would not be revealing, which this is what we are doing, that would not be strengthening and manifesting the truth about you, the truth about everything, that you are intimately connected with God. God is intimately connected with you. Everything is God, and you are here to be in relationship and to reveal that as a co-creative partner with free choice. You've been here many, many times before. This is the birth. So when you do that, when you realize that your challenges are just here in order to get you to do that, that's the name of the game. That's the only game, especially now, because we're at the end, we're at the climax, we're at the, this is a final showdown. So that's what we need to do. At least that's the invitation. And that's what I came on to say. So let me, I know it's been much longer. I wanted to do 30 minutes. Let me see what you guys are saying. So hi to everybody. I didn't say hi yet. Rebecca, hi. I'm so glad that Rebecca says what I'm doing is working. I'm very thankful for that. I'm really doing my best to ramp it up. It starts with me, I can't ramp it up for anybody else if I'm not ramping it up for me. And I can't ramp it up for me if I don't lean into bitachon. By the way, under this video is information. I want to say this before I go on with the questions, just because I always forget. I always get off fast. So if you want to get a daily, about 10-minute reminder, not from me, from a teacher I don't even know in Brooklyn, little lesson on bitachon, on trust, sign up for the daily bitachon. There's a link right below the video. Phenomenal. There's a lot of Hebrew. I love the guy. He's dynamic. He's a little bit edgy, but you listen for a few times. Sometimes I listen multiple times to whichever one came in, multiple times in the day, depends on where I'm at. But just like having it in your head, it starts to rewire. It's amazing. I also wanted to mention this is like sort of out of the off topic, but I want to I will get to the questions and I'll say this really fast, but I just want to make sure you know. I have been running a year-long program, Soul Infused Influencers. I'm in my 3rd year. People sign up for a year. It's not cheap. It's definitely on the low end of very high-end coaching programs that are out there in the market. I know because I'm a member of many, not all at the same time, but I've been a member of many. But it's, it's a serious commitment of time, of intention, and also financially. But I'm discontinuing it. I'm not discontinuing it. I'm running it for another year, for one more year, but I'm discontinuing the enrollment. The doors are going to close, in other words, in mid-July, July 16th. And there are a bunch of reasons for that. I'm working on my book. There are a bunch of reasons for that. I'm not going to go into them, and I'm not even going to tell you much about this right now, but I just wanted to mention that if you've ever had the thought of working with me in this program, and I offer another program at some point, I'm sure I will, but not now. So this is registration's closing. I'm going to really hyper focus on the people who are in it when the doors close on July 16th. And we're going to have an amazing year. And we're going to be working on this and so many other pieces of what this whole process is. The idea, the goal is to help people activate their purpose and potential, their deep God connection. I am there, like, I'm so accessible in this program. It's one of the reasons that I need to discontinue membership, because people get my personal WhatsApp. Not that nobody's abusing it, but when people have something private to say, I get voice notes, I get questions. And that's just in addition to everything else. It's a serious mentorship, and the community is amazing. So I just want to let you know that this is your chance, and you can reach out. I think that also under the video farther down is for sure my website and the email of Shira, the program concierge. You can reach out to ask her questions. You can reach out to me. I just wanted to say that. Okay, now back to you guys. Proverbs says, the man that keeps the mouth and tongue keeps the soul from many sorrows. Okay. Yeah, the Scud stories are insane. Insane. And you know what? People, every time before, when there's been a rumble of, many times when there have been big rumbles of war in Israel, people would go to the Rebbe and they'd say, my kids are learning in school there. I was thinking of moving there. I'm thinking of having a wedding there. My relatives are there. Whatever, should we abort? Whatever it is. And in every case, and you can see videos of this, the Rebbe said, God forbid. There's a video of a 90-something-year-old woman going to the Rebbe in 1993 during the Gulf War, or right before the Gulf War, and saying to the Rebbe, I want to move to Jerusalem. Is it safe? And the Rebbe is saying, of course it's safe. It's God's capital. Not only that, there are 2 or even 3 million Jews living there, which is an interesting thing. I guess, all the souls together creates a real force of protection, because the root of the souls of Israel is the Shekhinah. And you should go. And he said, and it says in the Torah that Israel is the land that the eyes of God are upon it from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. No reason to be afraid. So, so the stories that happened in the Gulf War, the Rebbe told people asked the Rebbe, do we need gas masks? That was the big word, that there was going to be gas attacks. And the Rebbe said no. And I remember watching TV, watching the news in Brooklyn back then, and seeing the newscaster come on and say there was a gas attack. And I'm like, what? I had a crisis of faith for an instant, until somebody came on and said, no, false alarm, there was no gas attack. Anyway, our tzaddikim, that was the topic yesterday, are connected to God directly. They're seeing creation come into being from the top down as well as from the bottom up. We're all going to get there. But for us, it's the process. We're lifting the weights. We're changing the physical and the human. The tzaddikim are here without so much of the human. They have human bodies, but they don't have the human, stuff. Not the true, complete tzaddikim. They're just here to help us and to connect us. So when they say things to us, it behooves us to listen. Okay, marketing and media, dwelling on Intel, service cat, this joyful light. Just had this thought at the Exodus, the time to go to Israel was now, but it took 40 years. The Rebbe said the time for Mashiach was now. Yeah, could it mean 40 years ago again? It could mean anything, but it doesn't have to. It doesn't mean we are in a different place right now. Then it was just the beginning of the process. And that whole wandering in the desert was 40 is a mystical number. Maybe you know that in Kabbalah, it's a number of transformation. But if there had not been a sin, there would have been no 40 years. If there had not been the sin of the golden calf, if there had not been the sin of the spies, if the spies had been able to trust God that, the giants they saw fighting and burying their dead, that God could handle it, there would not have been 40 years. So the 40 years, yes, after the fact, it came out like that, but it was because we were not awake. You wanted to end now, get up, stand up and wake up. Don't start prophesying time. We could be 60 years too. Something has to happen, and it has to happen now, and it will happen. I think I've told you before that story from the Talmud, that there are two sages, I forget their names, who are discussing, they're discussing a verse that says at the end, or one of them says at the end of time, the Jews will do tshuva, they'll repent, return to their source, and Mashiach will come, the Redeemer will come. And the other one says, well, what if they don't do tshuva? Or if they don't return, then Mashiach won't come. So the first one says, if they don't return, God will erect an evil king, a wicked king, and he will oppress them with harsh degrees. And then they will do tshuva, they'll return to God, and then they'll be redeemed. So it's going to happen one way or another, just like the sikha, like the discourse of Balak that I told you about the evil that surrounds us, that's increasing from the outside, from the inside. It's all here to catalyze one effect. Be catalyzed. That's totally up to you. You have it in your hands. Stand up. It's all over. And it doesn't take everybody. By the way, that's another big illusion, or like an excuse. Like most people are not here in the beginning. Well, not people but like I told the story of the letter that I got from the Rebbe, where he talked about how his followers are in a deep state of trance, and how if somebody, in the rare case somebody's activated, they want to be active, they call a meeting, and the people come to the meeting, and everybody wants to share their way of doing things. Nobody agrees. And then the original person walks out and says, I did my job. There's no one to work with. Okay. That's like, you don't start thinking like that. Or if you already think like that, stop it. Stop it. It won't get us anywhere. It'll just keep us running around in circles, just like they want us to do. When your consciousness gets free, even a little bit, when you connect to the Torah, when you connect to like-minded people who are connected to the Torah, when you start to do these things that the Rebbe tells us to do, primarily working on bitachon, when you understand that it's up to you, the Rambam, Maimonides, the core codifier of Jewish law, and particularly the laws of kings and Melech HaMashiach, these laws, he says that one of the 13 principles of faith that we are required to have is that Mashiach can come any moment, and I need to wait for him every day. And the Rebbe says not every day, all day, every moment of every day, and that one good action, one good word, one good thought can catalyze the whole thing, can tip the balance scale. So for the whole world, not just for you. So we have to understand this. We've been sleeping, you guys, even those of us who call ourselves awake, we've been sound asleep. Maybe not compared to other people, maybe not in as deep a sleep. Like, something happens and we're like, what? And we turn over. What do I mean by turn over? We stay disempowered. You have divine power. I am not kidding. You have divine power. I have divine power. We're emissaries of God. Going to use it or not? How do you know how to use it? Chassidus, there are teachers out there. I consider myself to be one of the most comprehensive teachers of the how. That's what my programs are about. Because that's what my life is about. That's what Chassidus is about. But it's easier if you learn it from somebody who's digging in that way. Anyway, so 40 years, no. It doesn't mean 40 years. By the way, the Rebbe was Rebbe for 40 years before this happened. Actually, exactly 40 years, from 1951 to 1991, which was the date of the beginning of the redemption process, the beginning of the birth process. And not only according to the Rebbe, but according to the Vilna Gaon in the 1700s, 1991, that was the time. So that was the 40 years. Now we're just hanging out suffering or watching others suffer. That's the truth. We have to be with truth, guys. We really do. If this resonates as truth, I'm telling you, I am making a very strong suggestion and request. Sometimes I feel shy, but it's not really about me. Share with your friends. Share with your lists. Share with people. Share this video and share these concepts and stand up and wake up and use your power because you're here to save the world. I'm really as serious as I could be. Should we stop watching news? I try really hard lately, harder and harder. I'm trying not to watch the news. Most of it is complete BS. Almost all of it is psyop. The Jerusalem Post, absolutely. Or Sheva, absolutely. It's all BS. It's all controlled media. It's not even controlled opposition. It's not even that good. It's just controlled mainstream media. And that's only going to confuse you and distract you and make you scared, as it's designed to do. For a long while, I had this like desire to know things, like a lot of us. So I was listening to alternative media where people seem to know things, but very recently, I've realized that my brain gets co-opted and my energy system gets co-opted, and I go into a state of fight or flight. Even if I am overriding it with my thoughts, it's happening to my body. And it doesn't take much because we're so primed for that. And anybody who says things that make you scared, never listen to them again. That's my best advice. Says things, prints things. Most of them are lying anyway. A lot of them are telling you the exact opposite of the truth, and they're deliberately psyoping you. And this is, the Erev Rav thing, but the sorcery thing. But even if they're not trying to do that, but they're getting clickbait, or they're, they themselves are vibrating with, either it's going to happen, we're waiting for somebody else to do it, or it's scary, we have to have the scare event or whatever, just turn them off. You have one power, but it's a superpower. It's a cosmic power. It's an unlimited, infinite power. That is bitachon. Be partners with God and forget about everybody else. Be partners with God, and then do good things for people. Starting with share the video, educate them, give them good advice, make them dinner if they feel like they need some nurturing, whatever. Invite someone to go out with you and your friends that might not normally have such a good social life. There's so many things we can do, and they make a difference too. Maybe that's the one action. But don't get your information from any source that's compromised, and all sources are compromised right now. Even sources even people that I've pretty much determined do know exactly what's going on. First of all, they're not in control. There are a few of those, and I now and then do listen to them. They're not in control. They have also given all kinds of dates that haven't come to pass because God's in control and because God is waiting for you. So really, you're in control. So if you're upset about the dates, look in the mirror. And those, including Q, have said disinformation is necessary. So how do you know? One person told me, one of the influencers I actually respect and like, Tori, said a few years ago that there's psyops being directed at you from all sides, white hats, black hats. And if she said if psyops were like bullets, you would be as full of holes as a strainer. So you don't need that. It's going to leak out your power. Stand up, wake up, bitachon, connect to God, do what is suggested from the one who has the power. The master is sick of my mind. Of your mouth, I don't think so. I think God likes it when you have it out with him. As long as you're, you can be upset, hurt, and angry, but as long as you're like essentially, you know who's boss. And I think real discourse is appropriate a lot of the time. Not to, there's no place to go if you're rebellious. There's only one being in charge of the world. So it's better to align yourself, but not like a wimp. Be a real person. I'm at 770 now. Beautiful. Oh, somebody asked, I missed a question about if the Rebbe said that Gog and Magog, that the Holocaust was Gog and Magog. I asked that question years ago, quite a few years ago, of a couple of extremely learned rabbis in Crown Heights who I trusted, who were very Geula oriented, and they both told me that is not true, that it's more complicated than that. So I don't know about that rumor, but But it doesn't matter because we're in Gog and Magog now. It's obvious that we're in Gog and Magog. Is the world trying to take away Jerusalem from the Jews? Yes. There's so many different interpretations of Gog and Magog. Is this a spiritual war over God, between God and the powers of Moses and the powers of Egypt? Yes. Is the Erev Rav behind a lot of this and giving a bad name to the Jews on purpose? Yes. This is Gog and Magog. It doesn't matter. Rebbe didn't say it, but if he had said it, that would be problematic, but he didn't say it, so. Okay. Sorry, I didn't tell you the word you were looking for, marbles. Marbles. Thank you, Wanda. Hi, Sydney. Okay, we're down to seconds, and everyone's so important, ramping up the refinement. Yes, that's right. We could be down to seconds, or we could not be down to seconds. How much more fear are you interested in experiencing or having others experience? Okay, certain people maybe. But I mean, ultimately, everybody's going to wake up. But even the Tanya talks about how we're going to move from the Eitz Hadas, Tov Ra, the tree of life of good and evil, to the tree of knowledge of good and evil, to the tree of life. But the Erev Rav, we won't. Those of us who have evolved, like some people say 5D, I'm going to say divine consciousness. Those of us who have evolved will already know intuitively what God wants, what's right and wrong. Just like people these days, like I said earlier, know intuitively that it's not cool to kill people or steal. Although some people make an exception for themselves, but everybody knows it's not cool. That's and to the point where people can say it's got nothing to do with God. It's just obvious. No, it's not. What happened is God's perspective has embedded itself in your neuro wiring to the point where you think like God. So we're now just accomplishing that on a higher, deeper level. Many higher, deeper levels. And that's what's happening here. So it's about our consciousness and our connection, bitachon, Torah, mystical Torah. Yeah, I mean, the Rebbe used to say, Tchias Amesim now, like anything could have happened. Can you imagine how frustrating it would be? Like Moses wasn't allowed to see the promised land in that incarnation. The Rebbe was not allowed to see Geula, though it was his whole life. Somebody posted a video by the nation of Israel, Zev Zelenko's, Dr. Zelenko's brother Frank, and Greg Svilifshitz have dialogues. They have a platform on YouTube, and they were discussing the Rebbe yesterday, and Frank Zelenko, Dr. Zelenko's brother, was saying things about the Rebbe that I've never heard anybody else say. I know these things because I lived them, but the way he was capturing the essence of the Rebbe was so profound and so vibrationally correct. It was really, really beautiful. So the Rebbe, he pointed out that the Rebbe never took a vacation in his life. I mean, maybe before he was Rebbe, before he's married, I don't know, but in his years of leadership, never. He barely slept. His whole universe was Geula, Hasidus, the Jewish people and all peoples. He urged that the 7 mitzvahs be taught to all the nations of the world and said that if it had been done, the Holocaust couldn't have happened. Can you imagine that he left this world, at least physically, temporarily, without seeing the redemption? Like Moses didn't see the promised land? Why is that? Me, you. And I could tell you why it's meant to be and why it had to happen and what the result is, what the positive effect is. At the end of the day, we're all here to take leadership. And that's our essence and our mission and our destiny. So, it had to happen. But if we could have stood up, we could have, should have, would have, but just for the learning, just for the lesson, if we could have stood up and done what we needed to do and been who we needed to be then, we would have circumvented the last 32 years and a lot of pain has gone down. Okay, so just see it that way. We're in a quantum universe. Focus on redemption. Focus on bitachon. Focus on you as the center because God runs through you if you let him, to the degree that you let him. Some of it's conscious, a lot of it's unconscious. That's why we want to replace human thinking with divine thinking through Hasidus and authentic Kabbalah Torah. That's a process. You want to train your mind through the kinds of exercises, teachings, tools that I teach in my program and others teach in their programs. Release the traumas. Open up the channels. We're all here to be channels between heaven and earth. But if your channels are clogged, Then we see what we see. Okay. So much of what you talk about, consciousness, power of thoughts and intentions vibrating, completely aligned with non. Yeah, of course. The Zohar says the Torah is not meant to be like only stay up there in Torah words. One important piece of my mission is to take the wisdom of the Torah, the deepest wisdom, and bring it down in regular words so people can relate to it. Torah lo bashamayim hi. Torah is not supposed to stay in heaven. And the Zohar talks about how in this time, starting in the time of the Baal Shem Tov, but the 6th century of the 6th millennium, which is still continuing this era, there's a wave of preparation for the Geula, and as part of that, the chambers of heavenly wisdom will open and flood the world with divine wisdom. That's authentic Kabbalah and Hasidus. That when I first became religious, there was no Hasidus in English except for one of the 5 books of the Tanya. That's it. Much less any other languages. Now, there are thousands and hundreds of thousands of volumes in all languages. That was not that long ago. There's a flood of divine wisdom, and it's accelerating, coupled with, the Zohar says, an opening of it's like it's comparing to the flood of Noah. In Noah's flood, it wasn't just rain, that's like the divine wisdom, but the earth opened up. Underneath the earth, there are water, they're like underground water table, there's ocean. And that's why when you dig deep enough, you're going to hit a vein of water coming up from that ocean, and that's how you get a well or a lake or a river. It's all coming up from underneath. That's not just rain. So that opened too. The great depth opened and flooded the world, and some of those waters were boiling and whatever. But the Zohar says that these times are like that, only it will be wisdom, not rain. So there will be the heavenly wisdom flooding the earth from above. That's the Torah, the divine consciousness, the wisdom that I teach and learn, and that is the most essential because it's God's wisdom and God's will. And you absorb it, and it takes over your human mind. Not it controls you. It floods and saturates into your brain. So you start thinking like God, not just like morality, but like much deeper things. And at the same time, the world, the earthly wisdom, the chambers of innovation and secrets of the earth are being discovered, uncovered, revealed, and manifested more and more and more. And those things aren't meant to be separate. They're meant to converge, because that's what Geula is. It's conversion of heaven and earth. That's part of what it is. So yeah, that's why the world is reflecting the inner meaning of Hasidus to a certain degree. And certainly Hasidus can explain from God's point of view why things are happening and what the potential is that's being discovered by people who are sitting in a laboratory or in their garage, they say, maybe. Yeah, you do have to filter. For that, you also have to be knowledgeable. Fear and distrust in God won't pave the way to utopia, but emunah, lightness, and ease will. Yeah, emunah, lightness, ease, and trust. Trust. Again, trust is such a closeness. Like, your best friend or your parent or your child, if push comes to shove and you need something, they're going to move heaven and earth to make it happen. God's like that too. But you have to be like his best friend or his child or his partner. And then he'll move heaven and earth to make what you need happen. And he can do it. That's trust. That's bitachon. 5D, 5 dimensions of the Torah. Interesting. I wonder if that's somehow I don't think, I would be surprised if that was a conscious connection, that whoever brought that 5D concept into the world, I don't know who that was. There are 5 dimensions of the soul. She's right. And 5 dimensions of the Torah, 5D. I never thought about that. Thank you, Kabbalah Queen. That could just be like a divine providence, or it could be it has to be, because how did it take over as the language? That's so interesting. I love that. I'm going to be using that. So don't feel like I took your idea. I'm giving you credit now. That's brilliant. Okay. God can prove itself to people when it's appropriate, and that transforms a person. True. Trust in Hashem, no matter how much we're suffering, is being strengthened. Yes. We can move forward in fear, but we can also connect to God so deeply in prayer and receiving that we can find a space where there isn't fear, at least for a bit. And that's where the real magic happens. Tammuz can be hard if we can't be grateful to Hashem. I want to tell you something about Tammuz. Tammuz, what Sharon's probably referring to as Tammuz, is one of the 2 months of the summer that contains within it what's called the 3 weeks. It's a 3-week period of mourning. It starts on the 17th of Tammuz. Today is the 4th. Yesterday was Gimel Tammuz, the 3rd. We're going to stop momentarily. I'll run into Shabbos. Thanks for hanging with me. Please remember to like and share the video. I'm asking you that with force. So please just do it. This one and others, okay? This is how we get the word out. This is how we build a community. This is how we build a consciousness. It's not a joke. It has to happen. I cannot do it alone. Not that I'm doing it alone, but my piece I am, or I have been, and that's not going to work. We have to do it together. Okay, anyway, so Tammuz, so the 3 weeks of mourning are the mourning of the temple. Different events happened. The walls being breached, the temple burning. On Tisha B'Av, the 9th of goes Tammuz of. So it's the end of the 3 weeks. That's when the temple was burning. That's the fast that we fast for 25 hours, no food, no water. It's a day of mourning because both temples were burned on that day and other negative events. However, that's the outer meaning. The inner meaning is Tisha B'Av is the day that Mashiach is born. Tisha B'Av in the afternoon of Tisha B'Av, when the fast intensifies, the laws of mourning go away. Not the fast, but some of the other ones. The energy is already getting lighter because the flip inner potential of these 3 weeks is messianic, is divine, is blessed. Like the weights, right? Thank you guys for liking and sharing. It's like the weights. So a lot of it is our perspective. And it just happens, not by any accident, that the Hasidic Yamim Tovim, the holidays of Hasidus, of Kabbalah, of the Rebbes, of the Baal Shem Tov, the Messianic Torah, those holidays, a lot of them are taking place in this month of Tammuz. So I was thinking, Tammuz, fasting. But the young rabbi of the synagogue that's on the block that I live in the old city of Tzfat drove by a couple days ago, and he's like, Tammuz. I'm like, yeah. He's like, month of Geula. I'm like, oh, you're right. Gimel Tammuz, even before this happened, this day of Gimel Tammuz didn't just happen to happen. Before this Gimel Tammuz, oh man, I could go on for hours. I'll really try to keep this tight and get out of here. Gimel Tammuz, the 3rd of Tammuz, thousands of years ago, something happened. It was already a holy day. It was a holy day before the time was created. But what happened on the 3rd of Tammuz? Joshua stopped the sun. Joshua, Yeshua, the successor of Moses. The Jews were fighting with their enemy, one of their enemies in the many battles, and the battle of Jericho, and they were not doing so well. And Yeshua, he asked for a miracle, and the miracle that he got was that the sun stopped. Not just the sun. There's a whole. This happened in this week's portion. Korach in Israel. We're out of sync, so we're in Hukat, about to go into Balak, but Korach is where most of the world is in Korach. That's when this happened. It happened on the 3rd of Tammuz. What does it mean to stop the sun? It means that the whole universe is controlled. You need to know about astrology. The whole universe is controlled by the cycle angels that are moving around the orbits of all the heavenly bodies, starting with the sun. And the Rambam talks about how they have consciousness more than a human, less than an angel, and they're bowing down in their orbits to God and praising God, literally with consciousness, as the cycle angels move them, and that controls that's the spiritual interface, like the steering wheel that controls events that happen in the world. Now we're not allowed to predict using astrology. We're allowed to learn about our tendencies, but we're not allowed to predict because we're not controlled by the cycle angels. We're way above them if we go there, and that's what we're meant to do. So we're not allowed. But what happened? What happened when Joshua stopped the sun? He stopped all of the orbits, meaning he stopped the influence of the sun, which was the natural order, the things that could be predicted by astrology. He went above the stars and above the sun. And he kept them on a physical level. There was daylight, it was turning dark, and there was daylight. And in the daylight, the Jewish people beat their enemies. God could have just had them all drop dead. He could have had a giant boulder fall on their heads or whatever. Why did he stop the sun? Because embedded in that day is the power to go above nature, like all of nature, including the angels that control nature, including the entire cosmos that everyone's so in love with now, infatuated with, the beings in the cosmos. That we're above the cosmos. That's our job, only our job. So that's Gimel Tammuz. The third of Tammuz just happens to be that's the day that the Rebbe's soul left his body to create greater influence. If you didn't hear the live yesterday, I explained that there. To be embedded, to allow his powers to be embedded in us on that day when Joshua stopped the sun. And then it was the beginning of the release of the previous Rebbe from Russian and Soviet imprisonment, where they imprisoned him because of the Erev Rav to stop the spreading of Torah. He died for it. I mean, he didn't die for it. He suffered for it. He was tortured in prison. He called upon 9 other men to make a minyan of 10 men, his followers, to swear, to teach Torah and spread Torah on Mesiras Nefesh, up to Mesiras Nefesh. What does that mean? To die for it if necessary. And several of them did. And he was imprisoned by the Soviets, and he was tortured by the Soviets to the point where he could barely move. But he was released by the same Soviets in Tammuz. The same system that oppressed him now released him. First, they commuted his death sentence to life imprisonment. And then on Yud Beis and Yud Gimel Tammuz, 12th and 13th of Tammuz, he was officially free, but it was Shabbat, so he couldn't leave until on the 12th of Tammuz, the 13th of Tammuz, he was able to leave. So embedded in the beginning of Tammuz, in the core essence of Tammuz, is liberation and a supernatural transformation. Supernatural transformation. Taking the very things that give power to the enemy and having that enemy turn around and be your best ally. That is the energy of Tammuz at its core. These are the things we have to learn. You can't learn it outside of Torah. These are the secrets of the universe. And these are the things we have to align with. Get to align with. And likewise, Menachem of, the 9th is the time when we fast, but it's at its core, it's the time when Mashiach is born. That doesn't just mean physically. I don't think it does mean physically. The energy of Mashiach. And the rest of Av is Nechama. It's called Menachem Av. It's called the month. Av means father, refers to divine Chachma, divine, like the divine wisdom that's this interface between creator and creation. And it's the comfort that comes from that place. That's the quality of the month of Av. So you need to know these things if you want to, first of all, if you want to be, a leader, and if you want to lead yourself, all those random scattered parts of you that are conflicting and causing trouble. We all have them. We're here for that. You need to know this, and you need to absorb it and integrate it and live with it. Yeah. So Gimel Tammuz is your Jewish birthday. Whoa. Okay, I'm going to go. What time is it? It's an hour, a little more than an hour before Shabbat, and I have a lot of things I haven't done. So I'm going to go. Thank you very much for being here with me, and spread the word. And I love our soul tribe. And let's make it happen, you guys. Stand up, wake up, bitachon. Sign up for the daily lesson. It's not me. That's someone else. But I'm spreading it because it's absolutely essential. Okay, take care.